Such beautiful melody, music team. Thank you so much. It's a privilege to be singing with you all. We have a renowned international speaker with us this morning, Brother Matt Norton, and it's very nice to have you here with your family, of course, being members of the Hunter Valley Ecclesia, naturally. And he's asked that we take a reading from Joshua chapter 2 to introduce his remarks this morning, and so we're going to invite Timmy, goes by Tim Smith, to come forward and read Joshua chapter 2 for us. Thanks, Tim. So we come to the focal point of our opportunity to reflect on our lives and to meditate on the Word, and this morning our brother Matt is going to exhort us to the theme of the hope, or the scarlet thread, or Hatikvah. You take your choice, but I'm sure he will spread the news about that to us. Thanks, Matt.
Good morning, everybody. How are we all this morning? Pretty good. Josh, how are you? It's been 2 weeks since your baptism, hasn't it? It's not normal that we put off, the extension of the right hand. Anyway, today is the day. How are you feeling? So I've constructed this very special exhortation for you. It's not entirely true, but it's partly true. So it's got the word Joshua in it. And look at Joshua chapter 2. It comes at I don't want to be depressing or anything. Moses is dead, but you've taken the reins. Joshua is now in charge, and he's holding on to the hope of all Israel. And we want to have a look at this little section in Joshua and just follow some threads. I'm sure most of us probably know these connections, but they're so exhortational for us. They're uplifting, even though it's an old story. A pretty amazing little section. So Moses is dead, and let's see if that work? Right. Yeah, we're going to look at the scarlet thread, this little section. So I'm not sure what Joshua thought. We're not going to send spies out this time, but God tells him to, because last time, 38 years ago, it didn't end well. Only 2 spies came back with a good report. Now, does any of the young ones know what tribes the 2 spies were that brought back a good report? It was Caleb, who was from the tribe of Judah, and Joshua from the tribe of Ephraim. They're the only ones that came back with a good report. So God says, you've got to send out spies. So Joshua's probably not inclined to do 12, thinks I'll just do 2. Possibly, even not wanting to have some compromising interest in it, maybe he just sent them from the tribe of Judah, not part of. Perhaps, and we'll come to that in a little bit. It doesn't really matter either way, but he sends out 2 spies into the land. And at this stage, all of Israel are on the flooded banks of the River Jordan on the eastern side, and all the Canaanites know things are really bad. They know Israel are on a war footing. They are collectively soiling themselves and just scared stiff of Israel, and the whole place is in lockdown. And so anyone, tourism stopped basically. And so even though they go in as spies, I'm sure they're not dressed as, Israelis with Star of David on their lapels. They probably look like the locals. They're instantly recognised as they come to Jericho into Rahab's house. And that's just one story, and sorry for digressing so soon. Just to give you an idea of what it would be like, when we went to Israel in 2014, it was during that week where those 3 Israeli boys were abducted from the bus stop. I don't know if you guys remember, that was the Gaza War. So for the entire week leading up, they were searching for these boys. The night we arrived, they discovered the boys' bodies. They were brutally murdered. And they commenced that night, or the next day, the offensive against Gaza. And we were caught in that war. We were there in Israel, I think, for about 18 days. The whole time we were there were bombs going off everywhere. We got to see bombs in Syria, we were in bomb shelters down in Beersheba, and bomb shelters in Jerusalem. We saw the Iron Dome work. Some of you might know, because I always tell the story about it. Got a bit of shrapnel from the Iron Dome that fell down around our car when we were there. It's unbelievable. It's so cool in hindsight, because we were silly at the time. I'd never do it again, but things like that never happen. Anyway, we had the length and breadth of the land to ourselves. There were no tourism. Everything was open, but there were no tourists. So we turn up, say there was this place we went believe there were 3 guys there wanting a tour. It's like we had our own tour guides everywhere we went and the run of the place. This is what it would have been like at this stage for Joshua, children of Israel, and the experience of Canaan. And so they go in, they're immediately recognized, says, oh, there's a couple of spies there staying at Rahab's house, which, by the way, was a large area on the wall. Possibly she ran an inn with, as we know, obviously other services, but it wouldn't be unusual for merchants and that to come and go to her house all the time. It's the way it was. And so the king sends messengers to get them out because he's going to execute them. And this is where Rahab breaks rank and does what? You have to think about this. Put yourself in her shoes. When we find out what she knows, because the men are about to go to sleep this night, the night before they leave, and she hides them in the flax in her roof. Oh, that is really bad. Can you see that from up there? Okay. Levi, what about your good eyes? It looks so good on the computer. Oh. It says, well, this is what Rahab came up to the men, they were probably scared too. Things were touch and go as to, like, why would she hide us? And is it a ruse anyway? Is she, putting us here to secretly, go and inform us on us later? She comes to them and says, I know Yahweh's given you the land. We're all scared of you. Everybody has retreated. We know about the Red Sea story. It happened like 38 years or 40 years ago. We know about that. We're still talking about that. People have been monitoring you. We heard about Sihon and Og, the Amorite kings. You guys slaughtered them. We know all about that. And from that point of view, we knew we were in trouble. And your God, he obviously is the ruler of heaven and earth. And I think the way the story reads is they went to bed that night, they thought on it, because she says, I want to throw my lot in with you. I want to risk all that I have, and I want to cling to the hope of Israel, the hope that you have. Will you show kindness to me? I've shown kindness to you. And so it looks like the spies go to bed that night, and the next morning, or early hours of the morning, she's going to let them out of the window by that cord. This cord here, which is it's a scarlet coloured robe, which is in itself unusual, and I couldn't really find out much about it. We'll look at the scarlet thread later, but it's not the same Hatikvah. It's a smaller one. This is something you're going to hold on for grim life as you go down out off the wall. And the word for rope there, Hatikvah, means a hope. And I hope it doesn't break, and I hope I live. It's the idea behind it. And she says, are you going to show me the kindness? And they said, we will. And they came up with this novel idea that this cord, this red cord, this coloured cord, which everybody could see, probably not leave it hanging out your window so passers-by go, do you let somebody out in and out of here? Some people have said that she might have given it like a woman's touch and woven it into the window. I don't know. But if you put this in your window, whoever, and it'll designate you, it'll mark this place for you as a safe place. And whoever is in your house, when we take the city, because it's going to happen, they'll be saved. You can have your mum in here, your dad, brothers or sisters, any relative, any randoms you want, as long as they're in the house. If they go outside the house, outside of this designated area, by that cord, you can't be saved. This is your hope. Hold on to it. Now, it might be a little bit premature in the exhortation, but what's the name of the Jewish national anthem? Because they've taken hold of this idea. What do you know? Yeah, it's a Hatikvah, right? And something about anthems in and of themselves, national anthems, they always encapsulate history of a people, their ideals and their values. That's what the anthem is meant to be. So like the Australian anthem, we never fought for anything. Nothing. Our land was just given to us. And so in our national anthem, it's all about, how good our soil is and how much sunshine we have and how many beaches we've got. It's nothing about fighting. But it's unusual because other nations, like there's Scottish now, anthem's called the Flower of Scotland. Actually, I've got to listen to this. I've got some words from the Scottish national anthem, if you're interested. This is in memory of a battle they had in the 14th century, Scots, against Edward, the King of England, when they actually beat him. I think it was Robert the Bruce. And they sent him home, defeated. And they still have that as the heart and soul of their national anthem. So it says, you know, "O flower of Scotland, when will we see again your like again, that fought and died for your wee bit hill and glen, and stood against him," against who? And everyone yells at the time, "Proud Edward's army," and sent him home to think again. And it's actually, which out like that. So you watch the gold medalists of Scottish win one. They'll sing that anthem, and the crowd goes crazy, and it really gets them going. And so when you watch like a sporting match and they sing their national anthem, everybody's screaming. Like it's called arms, it's called a war. And we're singing about potting plants and beaches. And we go, "Oh, Australia's going to play them." That's why we always get slaughtered. Our anthem is rubbish. I don't think it is. America's the same. Never looked at the national anthem, you know, it talked about the guns blazing. It was a commemoration of, I think the British were bombing the Bajingis out of one of their cities, and all they clung to was the hope that their flag, their patriot, the Star-Spangled Banner, thing that rallied everybody in unity, would still be flying at the end of the battle, and they could see it glowing in the bombardments at night. And that's what it's about. And it's really inspiring as well. And most anthems are like that. The Jewish one, does anybody know what it's about? And when they sing it, it lifts everybody. It's so exciting. Anyone know? Must know it. Hopefully it works. We'll put it up and, you know, just going to let you hear it because it's quite inspirational. And just have a look at the words. Now, do I press this, Marianne, again? Yeah. Again? Well, I don't know. I'll mark it up, sure. Quite so bad, but she certainly takes hold of the hope of Israel and comes into the hope, and the New Testament gives her pride and place. She gets into the genealogy of Christ. She gets a mention in Hebrews 11. Imagine even having a mention anyway. I think, is she the only woman in Hebrews 11? Only, how many? 3 in Hebrews 11. Okay, well, not many. That's incredible. And she's also paired Abraham as an arc of dynamic faith in action in James chapter 2, which is in itself. So she's treated as an outcast. She's always known as Rahab prostitute, but she's eligible. Who would marry her? Who would risk everything he had to taint his family line by marrying a Canaanite prostitute? Well, this guy called Salmon did. Now, what would ever motivate him, ever provoke him, ever even open the possibility for him to even want to do that? Why would he do that? Now, you probably know that in Salmon's ancestral line, there was another scarlet cord, a scarlet thread. And that adds to the weight that he may have been one of the spies, because he has this novel idea. If you want to be saved, and I know you can because I trust God's mercy, you put this scarlet cord in your window. Because way back, like his great-great-great-great-grandmother, does anybody know her name? What was? It was Tamar. Now, remember the story. We won't go there, but I'll just tell you the story briefly and as euphemistically as possible. Judah basically left the truth at the time. He's like the prodigal son, which is another little interesting note. So Judah basically left the truth because it comes directly after his betrayal of Joseph. So he's guilty, he's angry, he's bitter. They've sold Joseph, and he was right there as part of that, and he walks away. And he goes and marries a Canaanite woman. He has 3 sons, Onan and Shelah, which is always a strange name to call a boy. Onan and Shelah. Now, he finds a wife for his firstborn, and he dies. And in those cultures, they have this strange, but it's an amazing custom that if your brother's wife died childless, you were to go and make sure that your brother had children. One, to make sure your brother's effects and inheritance would carry on, and his wife would be looked after as the children grew, to make sure she would be protected and saved. And it was a form of social security for the widow, and it preserved the family property within the clan. And now, also, you think about this God had given them this law. This is it's an amazing thing. It was an act of kindness for this to happen. And you had a sense of duty, but it was an act of kindness. And Onan was meant to go and do that. And in a sense, even though his brother had died, Onan's children to Tamar would be like a resurrection for his brother. And his line would continue and carry on. And of course, through his actions, he basically buried his brother again in the ground and killed him again. And the only reason why he'd do it is because he was greedy and he wanted to inherit his brother's effects. He wanted his inheritance for himself. That's what he said. They're not going to be my kids. I want it anyway. And he stood to inherit it all. And it was an absolute dishonour to the family to do that. An utter dishonour not to oblige and look after this custom, the levirate custom as it's called. Now, of course, we know what happened. He died as well. So and Onan both dead. Say you're Judah. What are you thinking about this wife? You'd be a little bit suspicious of her at this stage, wouldn't you? And he's got another younger son who he doesn't want Sheila to Tamar, but he promises her that, but he tells her to go home and wait till he's grown up. He has no intention at all of giving Sheila back to Tamar, to raise up seed to her and to have her protected. None at all. And he refuses also to admit that he actually, that his sons rather are just wicked and God has already killed them. And all his guilt and all his self-hatred for what he's done to Joseph, now he's taken it out on Tamar. He puts her away, he sends her home, and he has no intention at all of looking after her. Now, his wife then dies, has a period of mourning for her, and of course Tamar, in an eventual way, takes things into her own hands and becomes pregnant by Judah. Now, I think the story is interesting at the birth, right? Don't worry about I'm going to stone her and everything, but at the birth, she's found out she's got twins. And it's like Esau and Jacob's going crazy inside her. And the story is, one of the twins during the birth puts out his hand. And the midwife grabs hold of it and puts a scarlet-coloured cord around the one that stuck his hand out. And people said, oh, the Bible's ridiculous. Criticism of the Bible never happens. It's rubbish. It does happen. You look up on the internet at obstetricians and they say it's pretty uncommon, obviously, and rare, but there's breaches at birth with twins. Things can happen. But the amazing thing was the midwife put this little scarlet cord around that little baby's hand to designate him, to mark him out as the special one, the firstborn, the honoured one. You're first. You're going to be Mum's little special boy. Didn't know it was to that stage. But then the other came out first, and she looked and went, what's going on? You naughty little possum, you breached, you jumped the queue, you came first, you weren't up front in the line. And they called his name because he burst forth, Eretz. And the other one that came out later wearing this was Zerah, the one who got it by birth naturally. He's the one that pulled back, in the type went back and gave it away. And Perez got to become the firstborn. Now, sorry if I'm saying this really quick and everything. I'm not good at genealogies, but if we step down the line from Perez, guess who Perez comes to? Perez comes to Salmon. He comes to Salmon. And Salmon is all over this. Salmon knows, even though he got everything by birth, Salmon did, he's a son of a prince of Judah. He understands God is kind, and God is so kind that he allowed Tamar into the hope. And Tamar gets now to have a line that goes all the way down to Christ, but especially to Salmon. And Salmon marries Rahab the prostitute, as if he wouldn't have been influenced by his ancestral story. Now, the great thing about it goes even further than that. Guess who their son was? Even if, by the way, I'm not arguing about genealogies because genealogies have holes in them, but what they do is they link the necessary important aspects together. And if someone's someone's son, it might be 10 generations later. It doesn't matter. They're still an ancestor. That's how the word son is often used. So guess who Salmon and Rahab the prostitute, guess what son they had? Guess what they named? Does anybody know? Boaz. You know about Boaz? No one would have liked Boaz because that's the prostitute's son. They go, and imagine Salmon and Rahab going down to the park, with their little 2 or 3 year old Boaz, and all the mothers scattering. We're not to associate with you. We're not going to play with you. Oh, don't get on that swing, Boaz. The prostitute's son was just on that swing. It's disgusting. And we know this is the fact because Boaz was an old man. He had plenty of money, but nobody wanted anything to do with him until somebody showed him kindness. And who was that? Ruth. And I've got this story about this cord is all about kindness. God showed kindness to Tamar, Rahab to the spies back to Rahab, Salmon to Rahab. And now we know Ruth and Naomi. Ruth showed like an amazing kindness to Naomi when she had turned bitter in soul, and she basically said, I've got no hope, none. Orpah goes, well, see you later then, and she turns back, she pulls back, she retreats and gives up, clinging to the hope. And Ruth goes, no, I'm, marriage vows, I'm going to stay with you, I'll be with you, wherever your God is, wherever you are, I'll be there. And Ruth ends up showing Naomi this amazing kindness. Same kindness God shows to all of us. And then Ruth shows kindness to Boaz, and Boaz says, you've showed me kindness because you didn't go after the rich young lads. You went after me. And he knew what it was like to be an outcast, to be related to Rahab. And Boaz risks then tainting his own family line, and it all obviously comes all the way down to us, because God's the one who does it. God chose Joshua and Dilly and Jeremy and me. He chose all of us, the ecclesial bride, to marry his son. If you're the God of the universe, would you choose us? This is the point. God's act of kindness in risking his own reputation and everything he's got, his son is perfect, and he married into us. That's utterly incredible. And this is what this story shows, how good our God is and how kind he is. It's an amazing concept when you think about it. Now, I don't know quite where I'm up to, but we'll get there. So, and all nations, by the way, all nations have treated the Jews since like they were a prostitute and like they were Moabites. That's how the nations have treated the Jews. They've got their own special word for racism. It's called anti-Semitism. But don't think the Jews haven't deserved somewhat treatment in the past. They've returned the favour to every nation under the sun, and they're very, very sort of exclusive themselves. But and it goes down to David too, because he shows extraordinary kindness to people who not otherwise get it. David's life. Now, I just want you to think for a second. The two Tamar, all she wanted was a husband. All she wanted. And Perez, in that line, goes all the way to Salmon. Does anybody know where Zerah's line ends up? Because Zerah's the one that had this, remember? Zerah's the one that got it by right, but gave it up. It's like the Jewish nation. people that walk away from God. They've got it all, but they give it up. Anyone know where Zerah's line ends up? Okay, I'll tell you this first before we get there. Hold that thought. So the scarlet thread marks out things. Marks out the child as being special and foremost. The scarlet rope marked out, Rahab's house and her people for special treatment for salvation. We know that God's done this before with this colour, with blood at the time of Passover, that this house should be saved. This house will be passed over for death, or hovered over, if you like that explanation, to be watched over and saved. The consecration of the priest, there was blood. There was a marking out as very specially dedicated to God. And also even the leper, when he was purified and came back and was restored back into the group, into the nation, they had blood put on their right ear, thumb and big toe. Strange, but it's a marking out. God knows. He's not going to forget who are his, but it's a really physical, literal illustration for us to understand that God knows who are his. And of course, we're all been marked out. We're marked out by the blood of Christ, obviously, as these things. I think it's absolutely fantastic that we're first and we're honoured, we're different, we're saved, absolutely unique, special to God, separated and dedicated to him, purified, restored, cleansed and renewed. That's what we are. That's what God has done for us, specially marked us out. And what we find out today is Josh has taken hold of this and he's been marked out. I actually got this for you, Josh, for a little keepsake. I didn't make it myself, I'll have to say, and I don't expect you to wear it literally, but you can just hang it up like on your fridge or your mirror. Not that you ever use your mirror, I could tell, but somewhere in your room where metaphorically you say to yourself, that's on my wrist. God's marked me out specially, and I'm never going to pull my hand back and take it off. So I'll get that for you. A lot to get it, by the way. So congratulations on your back. Zerah, because we all want to know, Zerah end up. Anybody yet want to sing it out? Yes, thanks, Phil. So if you couldn't see the other ones, you're not likely to see that. I can see clear as a bell, even with my bad eyes. So there's Judah. Perez goes all the way to Salmon and Rahab. Here's Zerah. By a few generations, ends up at Achan. Isn't that interesting? Because there's another contemporary. The direct story after the fall of Jericho, of course, somebody's knocked off some gold and some Gucci handbags and so forth, and they've thrown their lot in with the kingdom of men and Babylon instead of God. And Achan is given up the hope. He actually had it, and he's given it up. And he's got his whole family as a bunch of collaborators as well, and they won't admit it. Who's done it? Well, not me. To all like, time to fess up? No, not. Get a clan out of the tribe of Judah? Anybody yet? No, not yet. Draw another lot, and they finally narrow it down to Zabdi and to Achan himself. And then he goes, yeah, I did it. After he's caught on CCTV camera. When he had all the opportunity to repent, who knows how it would have went had he have come forth initially, but they take him down and his whole family down to what's called the Valley of Achor, and they stone him to death. And the Valley of Achor becomes a memorial for a depressing place where all of Israel remembers the horror of people giving up the hope, giving up the Hatikvah, letting go of God's hope of Israel. And it wasn't a place that you want to go to all the time. You're thinking, if you're reminiscing about some of the good times in your life, the last place you think of is the Valley of Achor. What God does, because he's so kind, and even though what Zerah did literally in pulling back, the nation of the Jews have fulfilled what Zerah did and turned away and pulled back from God and given up the hope, even though that's happened and God then gave it to the Gentiles, to us. God's so kind, he's still going to let the Gentiles get that red cord back. He's still going to let them come back into the hope. And he does it in this unbelievable way. Does anybody know where the Valley of Achor is mentioned again in the Bible? It's actually incredible. The door of hope, yeah. I mean, it's so strange. Let me read it to you. We should turn up one quote, shouldn't we? Let's go to Hosea. Hosea chapter 2. After the image of God, by the way, who did God marry first? Israel. And you think, wow, that's risky. Why would you ruin your reputation by marrying them? That's worse than marrying a prostitute or the Moabite. Israel, God did it. And after the story of Hosea, she was unfaithful and she went away. God said, I'm going to get her back. Even though she's given me up and turned back and given up on the hope, I'm going to go back and bring her back to me. And it says in, where's the quote? Hosea chapter 2 and verse, say around about 14. Therefore, behold, I will allure her and bring her into the wilderness, and I'll speak tenderly to her there, give her vineyards, make the valley of Achor. And everyone, oh, the valley of Achor, it's terrible. No, I'm going to make it a valley of hope, a door of hope. Now, it's not literal, brothers and sisters. God's not going to take him to this place and go, no, it's the door of hope here. It's a metaphorical, it's like a psychological place the Jews have to get back to. They've got to get back to the point where they are ready to put their hand out and receive God's love. And it says, this is how exciting it is, it says, as it goes down in that day, verse 16 declares Yahweh, you will call me my husband. Isn't that beautiful? So the Jews who gave him up, they wanting to, will one day come back and say, we're going to be married back to God. And it's like it's taken that full circle all the way back to Tamar, because all she wanted. She wanted protection and salvation. She needed a husband, and Judah said, no, not getting any. But our God is such a kind God that he will remarry. He will go back to his firstborn, his wife again. And she will have a husband that protects her, cares for her. And the whole earth will, in the end, obviously, be married to our Heavenly Father. It's an incredible sort of journey. And should wrap up. You can look at that later, speculation on the identity of the two spies, because Achan has been mentioned before that maybe he was the other spy. He's the one that knew what was going on, where the golden stuff was. We don't know, and I don't really care. So I don't really mind, but it's just interesting because his story of giving up sort of matches and balances out Rahab grasping hold of the hope. It's really interesting. So we ask, why did these Hira, Orpah, Achan, Jews, others ended up taking it on? It's an amazing concept to think about, especially if we take the end, because this is what we are to understand. None of us were born with a scarlet cord. None of us. God offers it. And we cannot give it up. We've got to take hold of that thread, take hold of that hope, be marked as special. And I think the point for us is then we show that same kindness to others. That's what we do. We share the hope that we have with other people and include them in. And we don't go, I'm preaching to them. I'm not going to show them the nice way of living. Won't be nice to them. God was kind. Obed was kind. Jesse was kind. David was kind. Boaz was kind. Salmon was kind. Ruth was kind. All these examples in the Bible of God through his people showing kindness to others. And that's what resonates with our Heavenly Father. So Josh has taken hold of the cord today, and this ecclesia showing him kindness, extending the right hand to him. It's incredible. God's extended it to us, and in like manner we do it to him. So that's the exhortation as we take the emblems this morning, brothers and sisters, to basically cling to that hope.